I'll say this. I always think at the end of the day, you want to be able to talk about sports, right? That's what we always want. We want to have fun talking sports, but it stinks when we have to go through all the COVID nonsense. That's what stinks. That's not fun. No, nobody wants to deal with all that, but that's the reality. That's where we're at right now in the world of sports. And let us just say this. The NFL, we didn't want it to get to this, right? We didn't want it to get to this where you have a bunch of players having to deal with that. Now we also learned Bruce Arians tested positive, right? You got a couple quarterbacks with the Birds, which we are going to get into. They're trying to separate these quarterbacks for not getting COVID. Carson Wentz, who, by the way, unvaccinated, quarterback Carson Wentz, COVID list. It's crazy. This is where we're at right now. It's absolutely crazy, crazy, crazy. So we're going to dive into that, and we will get into the big weekend for the Philadelphia Eagles, because the Eagles, to me, listen, everything is falling into place right now for the Philadelphia Eagles. And I'm not even going to get into the fact that they waxed my Giants, which I told you was going to happen. And they didn't play relatively well early on in that game. And then Hurts settled in. They started to run the football, and away you go. It was an utter shellacking. There's really no other way to say it. 34-10. The Giants have now dropped 4 in a row. They're staring down the barrel of a 4-13 season. We'll deal with them in a couple moments. But if you're an Eagles fan, you love the fact, once again, Jalen Hurts rebounds a little bit. They go on, they get the 24-point win. They now have kept pace in the playoff push. And that's all you can ask for. And as much as we want to look at Grable, Belichick, Frank Reich, I'm telling you, you have to be pleased with what Nick Sirrani has done. Philadelphia Eagles right now are 8-7. They're 8-7, and, oh, by the way, if you look up, they're the 7th seed right now. Minnesota's going south. Atlanta's going south. New Orleans has no offense. And the San Francisco 49ers just found out their quarterback's dealing with a hand injury. So it sets up perfectly for the Philadelphia Eagles. Run the table, you're in. That's it. And the NFL, you can't figure these games out. You cannot figure these games out. We started with Thursday Night Football where we liked the under, which we hit. But as far as the picks, and full disclosure right now, we teased down that Packers game. We hit it. We took the Cardinals. We lost. We took Cincinnati. We ran away with that one. We had the Bills. We took that one. We had the Jets. We took that one. And then last night, we played the under. But everything else is crazy. And, oh, by the way, horrible pick by Hugh, myself, on the Steelers. I don't know what the hell I was thinking there. They got trounced by 26. I can't figure this league out. If you can figure this league out, let me know. From a betting standpoint, when we're trying to gauge the number and play the number, I can't figure this out. And I'm wondering, too, with all these COVID issues right now, not being able to have players, we're losing players. We talk about competitive balance. This is a worst-case scenario. This is not what the NFL wanted. It's not. They did not want to deal with this. But it's the NFL. So what happens? The NFL is concerned with one thing. The NFL wants to make money. Come hell or high water, the NFL is not interested in your fantasy football lineup. The NFL is not interested if you're losing money because your parlay or your tease doesn't hit. The NFL is only interested in getting these players on the field. Why? Because they don't want to lose any type of revenue, any type of advertising revenue, any type of broadcast revenues. So now you got 1 in every 4 player is testing positive for COVID-19. You want to be able to field a competitive team? Look at the nonsense I had to watch over the weekend with some of these teams. Last night, the Saints, a backup, who have you never heard of before? Can't even muster more than 3 points. The Giants, because of injuries, had to start Jake Fromm, benched him, which he might have a career with Allstate, and they go to Mike Glennon. Now you got to deal with Carson Wentz maybe being out for Indianapolis, which, by the way, all of a sudden, they're right there in the AFC. Now everyone's saying they're the sexy pick, or at least a team that can contend in the AFC South. They won 3 in a row, 6 out of their last 7. Wentz is unvaccinated, so he's put on the COVID list. This is your worst case scenario if it's the NFL. But they don't care. They don't want to hear that. They will play these games no matter what, whether they start moving them to a Tuesday again. This is what the commissioner does, folks, and we have to accept it. We have to accept it. And it's unfortunate. That's why you look at some of these games right now, and you look at some of these lines. Can you decipher anything? I mean, they're utterly ridiculous. Raiders and the Colts, no line. Okay, fine. Washington dealing with some issues. That line's moved. Broncos dealing with some issues. That line has already moved. Dallas, who just scored again against Washington, is sitting there 5.5-point favorite at home against the Cardinals, who was everyone's sexy, trendy pick. The Browns had to deal with their COVID issues with their quarterbacks, whether it was Mayfield or Case Keenum. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And listen, as much as we want to hem and haw and complain and whine, it's falling on deaf ears. It's falling on deaf ears. That's why I'm telling you guys, when you look at these games, I mean, think about the movement sometimes. That point spread moved towards the Raiders before the Colts put Carson Wentz on the COVID-19 reserve list. Think about that. So they announced this at what, 1:22 Eastern time? Okay. So it appears that those in the gambling community already had a leg up. They already knew. So that point spread began to move towards the Raiders in a big game, a half an hour, 45 minutes before the news came out. So if you think about this, again, from a betting standpoint, this is why it's so crazy when it comes to betting these games. If you really break it down, if the spread starts to move a half an hour before the news of Carson Wentz that comes out, that tells me, it tells you, the gambling public already knew that. It shifted from the Colts being favored by as much as 9 to the Colts being favored by as little as 5 points. Typically, when there's movement like that, the only thing that moves a point spread that much is a starting quarterback. Well, I should say an injury to a starting quarterback, or in this case, an illness. So you want to talk about valuable inside information? Here you go. I mean, this is a perfect example of valuable inside information about a player's health, and this is why the NFL, even though they're still going to play these games come hell or high water, gets a little nervous. Because now all of a sudden we start to dip our toe in that gambling waters. And the NFL, we don't want to do that. They're scared. But yet they realize that's where their bread is being buttered. How crazy is that? How crazy is that? So obviously some people who had money on the Raiders-Colts game knew that Carson Wentz was going to head to the COVID-19 reserve list, correct? Before the general public, the John Q's of the world, you and I found out about it. Shocking? No. Hilarious? Yeah, why not? It's the NFL, folks. I mean, this is what they do. All right, 13 past the 4 o'clock hour. We're just cranking up. Busy show. Johnny Mac in about 5 minutes. Football in the 20s. We'll get to some of your tweets as well. At Rich Q on Q. Tyler, as always, behind the glass, keeping us on the air, producing today's show. We'll dive into a little NBA. I've got some lines for you guys that are just going to tickle your fancy when we start to talk about some of these plays. Remember how we always say, ride the streaks. Go with some of these squads. Start riding the streaks. You know, there are 3 teams right now that I'm looking at, and I'm saying, you got to be kidding me. Look what's going on here. Oh, we already know with Golden State. But then quietly, we look at the Utah Jazz. Let us not forget the Cavs, who won 7 out of their last 10. Let us not forget the Baby Bulls, who won 4 straight. So we're going to get into some plays. We'll dive into a little bowl stuff, a little hot stove baseball, a lot of stuff, whatever tickles your fancy on this Tuesday edition of BYP. Keep it locked in, 15 past 4 o'clock hour. We're just cranking it up. We'll get to your tweets as well on the other side, at Rich Q on Q, at 1490 Sportsbet. We'll open it up too at 609-445-1490. Johnny Mack at 420, Lloyd Vance in the 5 o'clock hour. We'll take you up to 6 right here down the shore.